Howdy, howdy. Welcome back. It is another Workshop Wednesday, and this week it's a Beyond Basics edition. We're going to talk about the 7 most common errors in Data Studio and how you can go about fixing them. Of course, before we go too far into this, my name is Chris Mercer. I actually do go by Mercer, and I am the co-founder of MeasurementMarketing.io. Welcome if this is your first Workshop Wednesday, whether you found us through some of the podcasts and talks that we give, maybe through some of the content that we've shared with other platforms like CXL Institute, Social Media Examiner, Digital Marketer, or Measure Summit. Maybe you're already a member over at MeasurementMarketing.io. However you found us, we're happy that you're here. It's our job to help people like you learn how to use all of these cool tools. And of course, today we're going to talk about Data Studio. Now, our flagship product, for those that don't know yet, is the Measurement Marketing Academy. I'll give you a tour of that program at the very end of all of this content, so you can take advantage of that. Now, with all of our workshops, we want to focus on one thing. That is one new idea, one new concept. And in this case, just focus on maybe one of those errors. Like, which is the one that maybe you either didn't realize could happen and you can keep an eye out for, or maybe it's something that's happened over and over and over again, and you can finally actually figure out a shortcut to debugging and fixing your own Data Studio reports. The idea is that you take one thing, practice that, make it a skill. Because remember, if you just watch this, you've been exposed to new answers and new skills, but they're not actually your skills yet. Not until you practice them. So make sure you pick up one new thing, practice it, then come back, rewatch this workshop. It's why we make them publicly available, so you can pick up another new one thing. All right, let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Beyond Basics, the 7 most common errors in Google Data Studio and how you can go about fixing them. Now, we're going to start first with a quick review of the measurement marketing framework. Remember, 3 stages. You got to plan, you got to build, and then you launch. And of course, in the planning stage is where we figure out the questions, the information, and the actions. Then when we have our plan built out, we go into the build stage where you set up your traffic using UTMs, things like that. You have your results with different conversion events or ACE goals when you follow the trainings in the Measurement Marketing Academy. And then, of course, the story. You build that together in a way that describes the story. This is where today's specific workshop is going to help you out because we're talking about Data Studio. Data Studio is where we build a lot of our reports. It's what we use to listen to our market to figure out kind of what's working and what's not, kind of their side of the conversation. And of course, it's what we use to build our forecasts, to actually say, okay, well, based upon our current benchmarks, when we listen to what's working, what's not now, we can predict and forecast how things should be working. And of course, that's what tells us where to optimize. So Data Studio really comes in on the story step, the listening, and the forecasting here. So this is where these 3 little areas that we're really going to be focusing this skill on, because when you're using Data Studio, you will, of course, run into errors. It's normal. We all do it. Fortunately, today we have our guest instructor back with us, Julie Brade. She's a lead instructor over at MeasurementMarketing.io. She's been teaching this practically forever, since 2017, and she is an account manager for our dedicated measurement management clients. She's also, of course, our Data Studio rock star. She handles all of our reports and is constantly helping out our students as she's an instructor back. Those of you that are Academy members know about the Ask Instructor support and have guaranteed probably talked to Julie once or twice and gotten answers from her on this. So we thought, hey, let's bring back Julie because she's in Data Studio all the time. She sees these errors. She sees essentially kind of what's up, and she's figured out some really cool hacks to be able to fix all these things. So with that, Julie, I'm going to go ahead and let you take it away.
Thank you so much for that awesome introduction, Mercer. So let's go ahead and jump right into the 7 common errors in Google Data Studio and how to fix them. So we're just going to jump right in right now. So the very first one that we see a lot is an invalid combination. And so what this you actually see, the words kind of give you a hint of what is happening. So if we see this wrench, and thankfully we can click on here and see details, and it's going to tell us a little bit more about why we see an error. And a lot of times, and a lot of the ones we're going to see today is going to have this type of hint for us. So we're going to say, okay, and we're going to come back into edit mode to see what it is we're trying to do. Well, we have something called product and we have revenue, so our dimensions and our metrics. So if you're not as familiar with Google Analytics, you might not know that there are certain dimensions and metrics that you can't pull together, as in they don't work together. But in this case, these are two of the most common ones that people try to pull. They want to know how much revenue did this type of product bring. Well, revenue is not the right metric that you want to use. It's actually called product revenue. And I'm not going to go into the details exactly why that is. There's other workshops and other courses that kind of go into that in more in depth. But just know that sometimes if you see that invalid combination, you just have to make sure you choose a dimension and a metric that work together. And below in this workshop, in our membership site, we'll have a link to this. It's called a Dimensions and Metrics Explorer. It's kind of a dev tool so that if you do come across something where you're trying to figure out do they work together, this tool will be able to guide you with that. So that's just another pro tip. And if you basically even Google the words Dimensions and Metrics, Google Analytics Explorer, you'll be able to find that too. So now we don't have that error anymore because we chose a dimension and a metric that work together. So again, invalid combination is just choosing two things that don't work together, and you have to adjust your logic to make sure you can pull them together. So let's go into number 2. And so this one is actually missing the data source. And it says there's no data source associated with this component. We're going to click on the details, and it's saying there's nothing there. So we're going to say okay and go into our edit mode and see what happened. And it looks like there is nothing selected here. So it doesn't have a metric, it doesn't have anything to use. Sometimes that could happen if you are in your managing your data sources and you remove one. Or something like that. That could happen, or you remove it and then you forget to replace it with something else. That could totally happen. But again, you have a warning sign or a wrench that guides you, say, hey, something's happening here, let's fix this. So now we just choose whichever one we want, and it's going to default to a common one in analytics. It's the new users and page title, and so that's what we have here. So that is how to fix the missing data source. It's just kind of going back to the basics. Is it plugged in? And in this case, it was not. All right, number 3. It says cannot connect to the data set. We have a wrench this time. And so now we're going to click on the details. It says the underlying data has changed. Please notify the data owner to refresh. So this one is a little bit more confusing, and I wish they would explain this one a little bit better here instead of explaining it here. So what I did is we have this Google Sheet here, and it has step 1, step 2, all these other steps, and I just added this little text emoji smiley face. And so if you're not as familiar with spreadsheets or Google Sheets with Data Studio, if you change the headers, even if you added like a space after this number 3, that is changing the data set, and you have to go into Data Studio to remedy that. So because I added this little thing right here, it changed the data set. If I move the columns around, like if I inserted a column or add something at the very end, that's also going to change. So how do we fix that? Well, we're going to go again into edit mode. And the other part where I don't like it says notify the data source owner to refresh. It's not as clear as what you're supposed to do. So you could technically refresh the sheet. That's not going to help. What you want to do is click on the pencil. So we're selected the actual element we're using. We're going to click on the pencil where it says edit data source. And we're going to drag this up a little bit just so we see a little bit more. We have all of our data sources here, and this is the refresh it's talking about. So when it says, I want to actually go back real quick so you can see that. It says notify the data source owner to refresh. Okay, this is the refresh that it's talking about. In Data Studio, you can refresh like the actual document refresh. If you were to click on these 3 dots, there's a refresh for the data source. And that's in the case of like if I were to add in some more rows here or change the data, refreshing the data with this one is how that would be reflected. But here, refresh the fields is to update any changes we made in the columns or the headers or anything like that. So that's the field. So think of the dimensions and the metrics and stuff. Refreshing the data is the actual data in there. So now it's telling us we have a new field and it's a missing field. So don't get caught up in it's like, hey, it's missing, it's new. Just apply, and then possibly if we had something like in this case, we had step 1 here, and now it's telling us we have another error. So we're going to click on that again. We're unable to complete your request. It doesn't recognize it because it's looking for step 1 without the smiley face. So it's just being aware of what you change your names to, if you change the names or if you remove stuff, being aware what it is connected to in Data Studio, and then adjusting. So here we've added this step 1. It still doesn't like it because we have to hover and click on this X, and now it's just fine. So if we would go back and remove this, let's see, I'm actually going to show you that real quick just because it's important. So we removed the smiley face. We're going to basically do this backwards. I'm going to refresh the document. I don't expect the error to be there because I just refreshed the document. However, if I refresh the data, meaning it's refreshing, going and grabbing whatever's here. If I refresh the data, I should get the error because, hey, it's changed. It's going to tell us, go notify the owner to refresh. So we're going to go back, refresh the fields, and again, we have a new field, a missing field, apply. And then we just kind of work backwards, which is what we just did before. We're going to get rid of this one. This time it's working, and now we can add in our step 1 again. All right, so that is just little things. If you're working with sheets, you're going to have that regularly. And the way to go around that too is work with a team, whoever's building the sheet, and just get it working the way it needs to, and just basically say, don't touch the header row at all, and then go forward. And then from there you should be good. Just getting the team and everyone knowing and understanding that every time they change the header, it will break, or if they change, add more columns or remove columns, it will break the data set. All right, let's jump into number 4. This is another common one. So here we are actually connected into a different part of the sheet. I just copied and pasted, and this is what it's looking at. So it's actually a percent and a percentage in Google Sheets, but when we look at it, so I'm going to hover and you can see it's looking at sheet 2, it's not showing it as a percent. So if you're familiar with Data Studio, you know you can click on here and then change this right here to a percent, but that's only going to do it for this one element, this one chart. What if we plan on using it repeatedly in the entire document? There's another way we can do this. It's going to be a lot more efficient. We can then click on this little pencil and we can make it bigger. We can see everything, and this is where we change it. So right here, it's identifying this conversion rate as a number, but that's not exactly what we want. We want it to be a percent. And then we don't want it to be a sum where it adds up all the conversion rates. We're going to want to change it to an average. We're actually going to show you what that looks like real quick. As you can see, so the grand total is now 521%, almost basically 522%. That's not what we want because it's summing them. And it says, so when we aggregate, we're adding them together. It's not what we want. So let's change this to average and say done. And we're going to refresh. It's still showing 521, but just a little sleuthing can help us figure it out. So if we click on here, it's still showing some, which is interesting. That's still showing that. So it might be a little bit of a delay or Data Studio bug. If I probably refresh it again, it might work. But I just added it in again, and we can see this one's the sum and this one's the average. So this is the updated one. I'm just going to go ahead and remove this one. Again, it's just probably because I need to give it a little bit more time to refresh and it'll be fine. But we got a couple more errors to go through, so we're not going to give it that much time. All right, so now that is how you would adjust with your data incorrectly formatted. in a way that it is technically a number, but it's not a most useful truth or a most useful way of adjusting. And if you're going to be using this metric a lot throughout your document, you're not going to want to have to change this every single time. So adjusting within the data source is the most efficient way to go. And so with percentages, you definitely will want to make sure it's an average. You want to make sure dates are also actually identified as the type of a date. That's another pro tip for you there. All right, let's jump into number 5. And this is actually a very common one. We had this very recently in our Ask an Instructor support system. If you recognize the steps, we have step 2 and step 3. If you're fairly good at math, you could say, well, it's about roughly half the users that went through. And what we have here is a formula that you would normally expect that would work is saying, well, no, it's actually 600%. Well, that doesn't make sense. And you clearly, anyone with good math skills can figure that's not right. So we go in here and so we can see that this is a calculation, and we're just clicking on here to see how it's done. And so what is done is step 3 divided by step 2. Exactly how you would do it in a regular old calculator. I'm going to get rid of this thing right here. And so we have a green check that says, hey, we've done this correctly. So it's saying that this should be done correctly, but I want to go ahead and hop off of this real quick. If we were to do the exact same thing but blend the data, we're going to see that the formula is actually slightly different, and it makes a big difference. So we're going to select this and then select the second one, and we're going to right click and say blend data. And this is just another way of creating a formula. And now we get the 49.88%, so which is great. So why is it different? Let's click on this formula here, and we could see that it's basically saying grab the total of this and grab the total of this, and we're going to do the math with them. And so why does that matter? Well, remember what we did in the previous one when we were doing that, the aggregation of sum versus average. Well, if you go here, this one's saying sum. See that? If I change this to average, let's see what happens. And apply. It gets a little bit closer, but still not the actual truth. If you haven't already got out your handy dandy calculator, we can show you real quick what the actual truth is. It's 329,642 divided by 660,868. It is actually this one. So it's the way the math works out that this is the actual one that you want to use. So how do you fix this one? It's just using the math that Google Data Studio is asking you to do. And that is just putting sum and then putting the actual metric that you're using in parentheses. And now we just apply, and we have the correct most useful truth. And this comes in handy when you're working in a table as well. So if we come in here and add a table with this, and then again we're going to do that summary row, and let's add in the conversion rate. Remember, it's going to, we have our different formatting here, and let's go ahead and change it to a percent and average, and let's see what it changes to. There we go. It changes that to the correct number here. And then if we wanted to add in, actually, let's go ahead and change this one to a chart. Instead of adding it in, we can do that and make it a lot bigger and add in a summary row. And again, this grand total is going to work properly because of the formula. If we didn't have that formula set up correctly, we would have that same problem we had before. So, and again, this is a very, very common thing that we see in Data Studio, so that's why I took a little bit more time on this. So hopefully if you come into an issue with your formulas, you know how to troubleshoot those now. Now on to the next one. Here is another one. It says cannot find data source. This is something like, let's say we are going to duplicate this sheet, and we're going to say copy of sheet 1. Then we're going to go into Data Studio and we're going to add data. We're going to choose Google Sheets. We're going to say the same document that we're looking at here, that right there. And then it's already here. Awesome. We didn't even have to refresh anything. So we're going to say add. Then I want to add a chart and we're going to drop it here. And I'm going to hover, and this is still showing sheet 1 because that's the one we were just using, which is very common. It's going to look at the one you were just using. If I hover here, if I come in and edit, you're going to see it's sheet 1, not the copy of, okay? So we're going to remove this. Now we get that error again. Now we're going to add. And we have sheet 1, sheet 2, and our Google Analytics. We could see the difference, okay? If we go into our data sources, we're not seeing it there either, but we just added it. What's going on? Well, this is where this refresh comes in handy. We're going to reload this page and we'll see if we can find it. So we click on our element again, we select, and now we have our different documents or our different data sources. So we have sheet 1, sheet 2, and copy of sheet 1. We're going to come up here. We have sheet 1, sheet 2, and copy of sheet 2. All right, so that is a pro tip. So if you're going quickly and you're adding things and all of a sudden you can't find it, where did it go? It's just a simple refresh and you have your data source. And finally, authentication error. What the heck does this mean? Well, if you are using one of our dashboards, our dashboard templates for Eyes on the Journey, there is a funnel right here, and this actual entire template has instructions, step-by-step instructions, and one of the things it tells you is to make a copy of this. And so we're going to go ahead and copy this dashboard, and then it's going to give us an error. And again, the step-by-step instructions shows you how to get rid of this error, but this is something kind of common, and we wanted to show you this as well. So authentication required is what we're going to see. And it says consent to render this community visualization has not been provided. What is a community visualization, you ask? Well, we actually did a very recent workshop on that, but it's this section right here. So it's all these other different charts and stuff that you're able to use. Watch that other workshop if you haven't already. Super fun to see all the different things that you can do with the other charts. But this error is, again, we have a different symbol. So we had a wrench, we had a little warning caution sign, and now we have a shield. So it's just saying, does this community visualization have permission? So we're going to say allow, and then again, it's basically saying we need to confirm that you're going to allow us to have this, so you can read all these details if you want to, and we're just going to say allow, and then it's going to pull the data that if it has any data here. So we're actually going to go into view and we will choose some data. I'm going to say workshop test training, and we're just going to let it grab the data. And now we have a nice Eyes on the Journey funnel, which is awesome. So that are the 7 most common errors that you will see within Data Studio. There are going to be some other ones that you might have, but if you have those, if you come across anything that you're not familiar with, definitely hit us up and ask an instructor support. We're always there to help you. And I'm going to give it back to Mercer.
I had just muted myself. Gotta make sure I unmute myself. Thank you for that, Julie. Appreciate it. Of course, what was your one thing when you go back and you think about all of the different things that Julie just covered, the 7 different errors? I know for me, it's you don't think about refreshing Data Studio. I mean, the browser. You don't think about, just going in and refresh the browser. And I'm so glad that she used that error of like, the missing data source. Like, I just added the data source. Where is the data source? Why is it not showing up? And it just is that Data Studio just took a second to get caught up, and just refreshing the whole thing is fine. It just fixes it right away. So a lot of those errors, like, that's a good simple fix. I would never have thought about that. I would have probably tried to go back and add it again, and then getting even more frustrated because I'm adding it and it's not showing up for me. So thank you, Julie, for sharing that. And the other 6 common errors, again, pick the one that's the most useful for you. Practice that. Try to make it error and then try to fix the error, because that's how you get comfortable with this stuff as you go through. I know another one thing for me was just that concept of clicking on the error, because I think, and Julie and I have talked about this before, but Data Studio is relatively good about giving you a direction into what the error actually is. So you can click into that, you can see the box, and 9 times out of 10, you can kind of figure out what's going on from there as well. All right, next week, we are going to be switching over to a strategy session edition for Workshop Wednesday, and we're going to cover a guide to common e-commerce terms. There's a lot of what we call these alphabet terms laying around, AOV and CPA and ROAS and ROI and everything else. So we're going to describe what some of these are, kind of familiarize yourself with those, so hopefully it can bring a little bit of light to all of this world of metrics, and we can kind of figure out what everything is. Now, if you want that workshop, and of course all the others that we continually produce here at the measurementmarketing.io YouTube channel, just click on subscribe, and that'll send them all to you. You also have the option, of course, if you're not already, of becoming a Toolbox member, where you get these trainings. We have the most current Workshop Wednesday is always back there for you. And you also have all of the tools. So when you see these different tools that we might feature, whether it's like, for example, Data Studio, we have these dashboards, the dashboard toolkit that's back there, dashboard design toolkit. We've got the traffic tracking toolkit. If you're a little more advanced, we've got the GTM cookbook or the optimization pipeline that's back there. There's many, many tools than more than what's just showing here. There's about 40 some odd tools that are back there. Take a look at them. They are entirely yours for free. It's just our way of giving back to the community. It's called our Toolbox membership. In order to get that, just go to measure.tips/ww, just the name and email. It'll set up your membership and give you access to the Toolbox. Now, I also mentioned the Academy. Remember, we said, we're going to, talk about the Academy. I'll give you a tour of what the Academy is. This is our flagship training program. So if you're at the up stage where you're kind of like, okay, I'm going to be like, I'm all in on measurement. I got to understand how to think about measurement. I got to understand how to strategize and build a measurement strategy. I have to know what are the important questions to ask and what actions to take, and what to do all the numbers, and how do I grow my numbers and optimize, and how do we get through this framework? Well, that's what we built the Academy for. We built it for this reason, to get you through the framework, to go through this plan, build, and launch model and walk through all the keys in each of those steps. So you know which questions are important. You know the information you need to collect in order to get the answers. You know what actions to take based upon the answers. Then you know how to identify your traffic, your results, and stitch together in a way that structures a story, so that you can listen to what your users are doing. You can actually listen to kind of their side of the conversation and see what's going on. Then you can start to forecast and actually, instead of asking all the time, like, what just happened to that money we spent on Facebook, you can start saying, here's what should happen next week with the money we're going to spend on Facebook. And you can measure against your forecasts, and that will teach you what to optimize, because you're going to know exactly what's working and what's not. That is the framework in a nutshell, and that's why the Academy exists. Now, I'm going to give you a very quick tour of the Academy, as I promised earlier. So when you come to the Academy, you get access to these 6 blocks here. These are the main core components of the Academy. These 3, the win courses, the on-demand workshops, and the toolbox, are definitely more of the resources. And then the support is through Winner Circle, the Ask Instructor support, and then, of course, Manage Accounts. Let's talk about the content portion and then the support that you have as well. Now, under the content, let's talk about the WIN courses. WIN stands for What I Need. They are very focused courses that are designed to teach you skills. You do not need to know every bell and whistle in Google Analytics or Tag Manager or even Data Studio, but you do need to know enough to get going. And that's the concept of need, of what I need, right? WIN courses. Just give me the stuff I need to get going. So you can see here, we have them organized by date. This is because a lot of members, might, every couple of months, they might check in on this and get caught up on the latest courses that they might want to take. We always go through and update where we can as well. The Win Google Analytics 4 Basics, an example for Win Google Analytics 4. This is the 3rd time we've done this in a year, because that platform has changed so much. We just actually did that in August of this month. So you can see here, we just updated that. Win Google Optimize was the month before that. Win Server Side, Google Tag Manager Server Side was the month before that, et cetera, et cetera. So you can always get caught up and see what the latest and greatest updates are. And of course, you can do it by topic. So they're organized by topic. Always, 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 just as a pro tip, start with the basics. Always start with your setup first, then go through the basics, then go through the other stuff first. Because this setup and the basics, a lot of times, the biggest mistake I have seen is that somebody skips the setup and they just try to do the advanced stuff because that's what they think that they're here to learn. But because they didn't set it up properly, you can't do the advanced stuff that you're trying to get done. So just a little pro tip. So anyway, that would, organized by section, you can see we've got Tag Manager stuff in here, Tag Manager and server side, as I mentioned before. You've got dashboards and reporting, which is where the Data Studio basics and beyond basics come in, along with funnel tracking and traffic attribution and even Google Sheets. Then we have measurement strategy, where you really start focusing on, how to build a measurement plan, how to actually forecast, how to optimize. So we focus on that. That's kind of like what to do with the numbers when you have all that, how to think about this stuff if you're working with an implementation team. So that's what the Win courses are. That's a tremendous amount of content just in this one section. But wait, that's not all. We also have the on-demand workshops. Now, the on-demand workshops, this is the Workshop Wednesday part, so you always get access to the most current Workshop Wednesday just for convenience. And then you can see, here's the rest of them. We have these are what we call student editions. They are edited down, meaning stuff like this is not in there, right? Because why would we, have that as an Academy member? You don't need to know about the Academy tour. So we edit them down. We put zoom effects and make it a little easier to use, and they're substantially shorter and more to the point. And the reason that they're here is so you have this on-demand library, which you can go through and say, okay, I just need to get caught up on what the newest stuff is. You come in here, you can get caught up on the latest changes to the platforms over whatever the months are that you missed. Getting started, if you want to kind of see, what are some basic topics, if you want to sort of browse for additional skills, beyond basics are all in there. And of course, the strategy sessions, if they are useful to you as well. It's not that you have to watch all of these, you don't. The whole concept between the Win courses and the workshops is not that you're supposed to watch every single course that we have or every single workshop that we have, because I promise you, we will create content faster than you can watch it. That's what we do. The reason we do that is because this is a just-in-time learning platform, so that everything you need measurement-wise is here to help you get unstuck and on the way when you need it. And you don't need to know everything right now. If you're just starting out in the world of, let's say, Tag Manager, you don't need to know server side right now. You got to learn Tag Manager first. Then you get into server side. So that'll be there when you're ready. So that's the concept. So the information that you need is here when you need it. And the reason we do the on-demand workshops again is because sometimes there's a specific thing that's been updated or changed. It's not big enough to make an entire course around, but we'll update the members here. So we have it in the on-demand workshop library. So that's primarily where a big chunk of the video content is, so that you can learn. Of course, the whole thing is searchable, so you can search through the database and see the lessons and workshops that will help you with whatever the topic is that you're looking for. The other thing we have is the toolbox, and I mentioned this earlier when I mentioned the toolbox membership, because this is the thing that we give out for free. This is the part that toolbox members can get for free. So you can see we've got the SEO toolkit, the traffic tracking toolkit, the power planner for forecasting, marketing behavior toolkit for planning. You've got the dashboard toolkit for planning out your dashboards, basic Google Analytics admin audit. There's a lot of stuff back here. Those are all free. However, Academy members also get it done guides. So these are being produced as we speak. We've got another one coming out in the next week or two that'll be all about a little more advanced stuff for like Webinar Jam and how to measure webinars and stuff like that. So I'll have a little get it done guide for that. But the Eyes on the Journey is a perfect example. Julie actually mentioned this in her training where she was talking about this template for the Eyes on the Journey report. This is what she was talking about. So we have, here's the video and steps to get it done. And then here's the Tag Manager template and the reporting template for GDS. And then, of course, the instructions themselves. So you see access to everything that you'll have access to. With that. That's, again, Get It Done guides exclusive to the Measurement Marketing Academy members. So again, content-wise, you get all of the courses, you get all the workshops, and of course the toolbox itself. But let's face it, you can watch YouTube videos and learn a lot of this stuff. I mean, that's how a lot of us start. I get it. However, it's tougher to get answers from YouTube, right? It's tougher to find updated content in YouTube sometimes. So that's why we try to keep this updated as much as we can. And of course, if we can't update a course very quickly, because they take a little while, obviously, to update, we will have workshops that have the most up-to-date stuff. So there's always things back there to help you stay up to date. And you will still have questions, and you should, because maybe our tech stack is different than your tech stack. Maybe something changes and it hasn't been updated yet in a workshop for whatever reason. That's what Winner Circle is for. So Winner Circle is one way for you to get support, and that is from the community themselves. So you can see here, this is actually a newly designed Winner Circle, so you'll see this change ever so slightly, but it's a pretty cool system where we have the groups here. So we'll have the different groups broken down. There will also be in the next week or so a measurement job board, because that's been a popular request from students and from members, really, alike, asking, hey, I'm trying to hire somebody, or I want to be hired, and where do I put my stuff? So we're going to create a little job board as well. But you get the idea of what this is. You can go through here, you can click on, whatever the topic is that you have a question on. It'll go through, it'll pull up all of the discussions for that particular group. So it'll take a second or two to do that. But once it pulls those up, you can then create a new discussion. You can reply read other responses to your discussion. It's basically a way for members to help other members. The other reason we do that is for things like this. Is sometimes we're not the best people to ask. Let's face it. Like sometimes we're not running Facebook traffic. We don't run Google Ads traffic, but there are lots of members that do run specific traffic platforms. They're better at those platforms than we ever will be because they understand how to run traffic, and people have specific questions around that stuff. Well, we have a little group for that. So that's what, as members need the groups, we will create other groups so that you can get help from other people. And maybe you can share your own secret skills with somebody else. Maybe you're really good at technical SEO and can help somebody with their technical SEO question, but you both speak measurement marketing. You both sort of get it. So that's the concept of the winner circle, so that you can see what that looks like. The other area, so we've got Win courses, on-demand workshops, toolbox, and the Winner Circle community. The other way to get help, and this is what most members use, is the Ask Instructor support. You heard Julie mention this earlier as well. Ask an Instructor looks like this. It is available, so the instructors are pretty much Monday through Friday, 9 to 6, roughly. And then the answers are within 24 business hours, so it's not real-time chat support. However, it is basically like having a consultant kind of on call, where you can call somebody kind of virtually over to your workstations and your monitor and say, hey, here's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, what do I do with this? And somebody that actually gets you. They understand what you're trying to do. Click the Ask Instructor button, pop in the question, pop in the description that you've got, and then you can get answers. I love, by the way, when you send us screenshots of videos. That's what we really look for, screenshots of videos, because then it really is you kind of giving us an over-the-shoulder view of what's going on. And we handle anything measurement related. So if you just have a strategy question where you're kind of like, hey, I'm looking at my dashboard, I'm not quite sure why this error is, and we can fix it. If it's, I gave this dashboard to my boss, but they said they didn't like it, it wasn't useful enough, and I'm not sure what to do now, just show us what's going on. Talk us through it. We'll be able to come up with some suggestions for you. Or maybe, of course, it might be something a little more complicated, a little more technical, where it's something that you're playing. Maybe you're learning Google Tag Manager server side. You've got a question on that. Send us a video over. Let us see your setup. Walk us through what's going on, what errors you're seeing, and our instructors will be able to help you get unstuck and on the way. And, of course, you've got answers to all those. You can reference them later. So you always have those. That is just, again, a huge, huge benefit for Academy because we built this knowing, in fact, that's kind of why this whole thing exists. We built this knowing that you're going to have questions, and sometimes you just want to talk it out with somebody. And that's what the instructors are there for. So that is kind of our claim to fame there. So you would also have that as an Academy member. And then finally, of course, the other support, and it's nothing to really show here. This is just where you upgrade, downgrade accounts, stuff like that. Need your traditional, I lost my password kind of support is here. The Ask Instructor support, it's way beyond I lost my password kind of support. It's definitely speaking with measurement marketing professionals who use Tag Manager, Google Analytics, Data Studio, like every day. They're doing this every day, working in a wide variety of tech stacks and different platforms, so they can help you get again unstuck and on the way. So that is the Academy itself in a nutshell. Now, to quickly review, I think the four main pieces of this are, from a values perspective, the courses for sure, the Win courses, the Ask Instructor support, the on-demand workshop library, the Winner Circle community. Those are the core components of value that I think the measurement marketing delivers. Now, the courses, you get access to all of them, all the updates, and every single new one that we create as we create new ones. So if there's any new ones that are created, you get access to everything. There's no limits on the courses. That is at least a value of $3,500 because whenever we used to sell these, and we don't sell these individually anymore, but when we did, we would do it as a minimum of $200. But if you just Google Google Analytics courses, you will find they are substantially more than $200, and as a rule. And ours, again, is Tag Manager, Analytics, Data Studio, Strategy. It's so much more than just Google Analytics. So a tremendous value back there in courses. The Ask Instructor support, at least worth $500 a month for something like that. For having somebody on call that you can ask as many questions as you want. There are no limits to that. Ask as many questions as you want. We love when people ask us multiple questions throughout the day because it shows that you're using it. We're really big into teaching you how to do this stuff and helping you build your skills. So we love when you're asking questions. No limits to Ask Instructor support. The on-demand workshop library, again, searchable database of I think it's over 250 videos now. It's at least worth $4,000 in value. That is because we used to sell those for $20 a piece way back in the day when we got started. We actually had members. That wasn't us selling them. We didn't decide to sell them for $20. Members asked us to buy them for that, and so we started selling them. And at a certain point, it just made more sense to create a membership site, which became the Academy. That's sort of our origin story. So it grew from that on-demand library, and everything else that you see is that. And then, of course, the Winner Circle community, I think just standard community is worth at least $100 a month to have really good people back there who have incredible skills, who understand measurement marketing as well. We're all sort of going in the same direction. It's a huge value that's back there. So all told, you have access to over $8,500 in training and support every single month that you are an Academy member. Of course, I invite you to join the Measurement Marketing Academy. In order to find out what the current membership levels are, or the rates, we do have monthly and annual options that are available to you. Just go to measure.tips/getacademy. You'll also see the link in the description below. So learn more. Just go to measure.tips/getacademy, and I look forward to seeing you in the Academy soon. With that, we'll go ahead and wrap this one up. This has been Beyond Basics, the 7 most common errors in Data Studio and how to fix them. Thanks again for watching this workshop, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.